Hello there, it's LaserMax. So today I'm going to be talking about movement. Um, Movement is one of those things that sets apart the dangerous players from the less dangerous players in this game. Um, and it's very common to see new players more or less standing still or just walking in one direction, and that really doesn't cut it. Some older players even do this and just focus on the attacks. And it's a bit of a mistake because the attacks themselves are always set up by proper movement. So if you don't stand at the right place at the right time, it doesn't really even matter what attacks you're using. Um, Movement is what allows you to set up the attacks. In other words, if you can't move, you don't know how to use any of the attacks. Um, so today I'm just gonna be trying to show you what types of things you can be doing with movement and what all those different mechanics can do, because you have regular walking, jumping, shuffling, rolling, shuffle jumping, dashes too, but I'm not going to be talking about dashes today, I don't think. And so I'm just going to be trying to keep it simple, basically. First off, we start with the most basic form of movement, which is WASD. Um, which I would call walking, even though if you hold Alt, this is walking, I always call this walking. So when I say walk, I mean WASD. Um, what is the most basic thing you can do? And the answer to that, probably the most useful thing, probably one of the first things you should learn, is where to stand, where to find your safe range. Now, what safe range is depends on what you're trying to stay away from, obviously. Now, generally, your safe range tends to be just outside of your opponent's shuffle fast or shuffle into other poke. Depending on which character, it might be a fast, it might be a balance, but generally, every character has something that is fast enough to the point where you can do it out of a shuffle and will still be unreactable. In Ryoko's case, it's shuffle into F1, but it's also 2 for fast 2 and fast 3. So good players will do that. I'll get a little bit more into it later, but good players will shuffle forward into a fast attack, and that extends the range of your quick move at the same time as keeping it very hard to deal with. And that's the range you want to stay out of, because otherwise you'll get hit by it. So how far can I shuffle from? Around here. So a safe range from a Rivoko, if that wall is a character right there, would be sort of here. So this is just a safe range. You can step into it a little bit to try to bait, and if the opponent walks forward and try to threaten you with their long range approach or move, you can back out of it before they get close enough and stay out of their range. This is what I'd like to call evading a approach. So when the opponent walks up to you in order to get engaged, that's when they're approaching you. You can prevent them from even getting the engage or getting close enough to hit you in the first place by preemptively backing off while you're still far away and managing the space. Which is why it's so important to find your safe distance, because once you're at that safe distance, the distance between you and the opponent gives you time to react, because closing distance takes time. If there's more distance, the opponent's offense takes more time, giving you more time to react to it. Rather simple concept, but it's something you should really think about a lot. Now, obviously, backing off isn't really gonna work in the long run, because all dual maps have walls, and getting backed up into the wall isn't exactly good. You're just setting yourself up to get hit. So there's that. But nonetheless, you can still walk backwards for quite a bit before you reach it, depending on map, of course. So that option is there. Now, there's other ways of evading approaches by using movement. which I'll get into later, but and there's also another way with walking, which is to go sideways. So you can prevent them from getting close enough by just keeping them at a distance by preemptively walking backwards. But you can also tap strafe for something like this in order to make it hard for them to recognize where you are. If they don't know whether forward is in this direction or forward is in that direction, well, they're just gonna end up approaching you inefficiently. See this? I take white strafe to the right, dodge, and then he walks forward in this direction. And well, now I'm far away again. So you can dodge sideways while you're at your safe range from afar to make sure that when the opponent shuffles in or when they walk forward, they end up accidentally getting thrown off. They lose you. And this is just another alternative. Even if you're out of space, like when at the wall, you can still go sideways and try to get that saving dodge, which is one of your only options here. Or if you don't want to back off at all, you want to keep the distance behind you, you want to keep the space behind you to stay safe, you can dodge instead. And there's that. Now I'm going to go over split second walking. So when I talk about split second walking, I typically mean tap the direction key and then attack simultaneously. What this allows you to do is move a little bit without giving the opponent to react. Exact same thing as I was talking about the shuffle earlier, except it's with regular walking. So if you're standing here at your safe range and you see the opponent is walking forward trying to approach you, one of the things you can do to counter that is to tap forward and attack. And what that does is it allows you to reach them and get engaged sooner than they expect, which means that even if they were trying to attack you, they're gonna attack too late because they were spacing their attacks to reach you when you're back here. But now you got bumped a little bit closer to them, and you're starting your attack way sooner than their attack is started in order to hit you, if that makes any sense. By colliding with them too early, they just get completely thrown off. And it's very hard for people to actually counter this. What they have to do is essentially start the attack and space it so it misses you if you stand still, but it hits you if you walk forward. And that is a legitimate strat to just throw stuff out in the air in front of you. But not everyone does that, so just know that generally if you encounter a player, tap walking forward from your safe range and poking is a very good strat. Other than that, you can also do it in the opposite way by tapping backwards into an attack in order to walk out of the range which they're spacing their attack in. And that's two ways to counter the same exact move. They walk up and hit you at their optimal range. You can collide too early, or you can walk out of it and hit them after they miss it. You can choose which one of those you use based on preference or depending on which attacks they have and what follow-ups they have. Some attacks, like side attacks, don't really have a lot of downtime because you can cancel them, so maybe walking backwards isn't a good idea against that. Whereas, well, if it is a very slow move that has a lot of time for you to move out of, it's probably just better to evade it. If the opponent is using moves like, let's say, Ryoko's Heavy 1, this move has a lot of startup frames. If you spend the time that move is starting up by moving, you're gonna find yourself being able to back out of that one pretty easily. Not on reaction, but if you just hold back, it's very hard to get hit by slow moves like that, because you get so much extra time. You get so much extra time to just move out of the way. Now let's talk about jumping. So when you want to walk away from your safe range, or let's say just get a little bit closer, you know, because you want to do offense and you want to pressure the opponent, try to make something happen, one of the things you can do is you can apply jump pressure, where you just kind of jump forward, and since you can change the direction in which your jump is going midair, you can jump in and out in the same jump. Now, why would you use jumps instead of just walking? Part of it is because jumping increases your move speed slightly, which makes it more effective for closing or increasing distance. Another part of it is that when you're jumping, it hires your hitboxes, making you a little bit harder to touch. And most people just aim their attacks straight at you, which means that sometimes, even though it doesn't happen all that consistently, the opponent will just barely miss you because their attack went under your feet or something like that. It does when you're standing close to your opponent, very close to the opponent. Typically, the jump won't really evade anything, but it's that sort of thing where if it just barely was going to hit you, it might barely miss you if you jump. And so long as you're fighting at range, there's almost no reason not to jump, just for the sake of being faster and adjusting your hitboxes to make you harder to hit. Now, naturally, you don't have defensive methods when you're in the air, and you can only use air attacks. But generally speaking, it tends to work in your favor. And also, because people know that you can't really defend yourself all that well in the air, and that you only have access to air stance, a lot of people get very tempted to hit you when they see you jump, which makes it even better with a baiting tool and just a pressure tool to dish out when you're trying to make anything happen. And there's also the fact air attacks exist. Now, depending on character, your air attacks might be useful or maybe not. I'd say with Ryoko, you generally don't want to use any air attacks unless you're finishing the opponent off, because, well, this has a lot of lock time and is very punishable. But punishes don't matter if it kills. Either way, this has quite good speed and range. And so if you're looking to end the round, you might jump pressure like this, jump in and out, make yourself really hard to touch, at the same time as being relatively close to them. And then, at any point during the jump, you can do an air right. And you could do it immediately when you start to jump like that, instantly jump an air right. Or you could deliberately delay it to make it harder to escape it. If you delay your air attack to be after the jump has already had a few frames, what that allows you to do is it allows you to spend more time closing in on them, extending the range. So if the opponent is used to seeing you jump, and if they're also afraid of the air attack, they might try to back off, but a lot of the time you're just gonna move too quickly into them. Backing off against air attacks typically gets countered by the guy delaying his air attacks, or maybe even doing several jumps. You can see this a lot with characters that have rather threatening air attacks, like Judgment. It's lagging a little bit here. Here he is. So people know that this air attack cuts through rather quickly. You can move during it, allowing it to close a lot of distance, and it combos and deals a lot of damage, and it's a big sweep. Both of those are big sweeping airs, so you can't really dodge them either. So when someone sees you jump forward like this, they just hold backwards to try to escape. Well, that's not really going to work if you delay it. You might do it at the end of the jump to get more distance covered, because you jump movement speed, or you might even do several jumps like this, where you jump once and do nothing, an empty jump, and then you go into another jump, and do that, which allows you to cover even more distance. And you can stand very close to them and just jump forward, and they won't touch you. They're just gonna be afraid of the air attack. But it's not gonna come when they expect it to. It's gonna come once it's too late to evade it. So that's the idea of mixing up the timing of the air attack. It's mostly to close more distance, so you can go for a more proper chase down. And naturally, to force the opponent to back off, to scare him. If he's standing somewhere around here, let's say I have an opponent standing straight here, you can see the shuriken slightly there. I walk forward, I jump forward, he gets scared and backs off, and now he's at the wall. You get the idea. Just because you don't get immediate damage doesn't mean that applying pressure still isn't a good idea. Even if you don't get damage, you're still probably gonna put them in a bad map positioning situation. And that's one way to cash in on applying pressure. And the reason that's worth something is because it's gonna ensure a situation where you're very likely to get damage after. Or at some point, if you just give yourself enough time, play it safe, lock them down at the wall, stuff like that. Then there's jumping over. Because jumping actually prevents you from colliding with the opponent's character if they're also on the ground, you can use jumping to phase through the opponent and get behind them. This is actually way more practical than you think, because you gotta actually stand really close to the opponent to even hit them. So if you know your opponent's gonna approach you and you wanna come up with some kind of counter, especially if they're charging, I would say, I would walk back a little bit and then I would jump over them. When I jump over people, typically I back off and then I walk forward on the ground just a little bit before I start to jump. The reason for that is because if you jump too quickly, chances are you're gonna run out of jump frames and land before you actually get over them. Typically there's a little bit of distance between you, so you want to back off close a little bit, then jump. You only really want to walk forward for a split second though, because otherwise you're gonna telegraph the jump. And it's more effective than you think. It's also way more effective against people who are moving quickly into you than people who are moving slowly into you. Which is why it's good against charging, because they just get close to you at such a quick rate that they don't really give themselves any time to react to you evading them. They walk forward so quickly, they just slide under you when you jump over them. Essentially. So that's jumping over with spacebar. Shuffling / shuffle jumping. Okay. So I was talking about that shuffle thing earlier, where you do a shuffle into attack. One thing to keep in mind is you kinda need to time it, because shuffles are, as you may know, cancelable by charging. And if you just charge for almost no time and just kinda charge it a little bit and then release the attack, you can make it look like you're cancelling the shuffle directly into an attack, because it just happens so fast. This is of course one of the main offensive tools that experienced players use to reach opponents that are too far away for you to hit them normally. If someone missteps kind of and stands at a bad range, you just do this immediately. And also, if you notice that the opponent predictably throws out attacks to hit you out of your shuffles when you're closing in, you can do stuff. Well, first of all, you can just wait and then hit them after they miss stuff, or parry them. But second off, you can do empty shuffles. So shuffling at the opponent is just a generally good idea to set up hits and also just to pressure, make them react. See him misstepping, just catch him. The opponent gets a little bit too passive, jump pressure, maybe just shuffle forward, back off, see what happens. And that's the main, why shuffles matter so much. Shuffles are a little bit more exaggerated than jumps. Because jumps only increase your move speed slightly, but shuffles have like a little bit more of a burst. which means they're just like more powerful in a sense. Then we have evading approaches again. So I talked about that, where you can reactively back off before the opponent even gets close in the first place, and how you can throw him off by dodging side to side to make him walk forward in the wrong direction. Well, you can combine this with shuffles or shuffle jumps. By using walking and then shuffling in the other direction, you're making a contrast where you're moving quickly into one direction and then quickly to the other. The thing about just walking is that walking, because Blade Symphony is a source game, isn't really instant. When you start pressing down the walk button, the movement speed actually winds up, starts slow and then gets faster. But it happens so fast that you go from 0 to 100 that a lot of people don't even notice that the mechanic is there. What this also means is that if you're moving in one direction, you need to stop all the momentum in that direction before you even move to the other, which makes moving side to side like this a little bit clunky, but just by a little bit. This is something you can bypass by using movement techniques. So if I start moving, or like walking in one direction, I can immediately shuffle at full speed to the other, which makes the left and right movement a little bit more pronounced. It makes it harder to deal with. It makes it seem like I'm actually moving faster than I normally would. So walking in one direction and shuffling or rolling the other way is a really good way to evade the opponent. So you could do that from far away before they even get close to you, just to make sure that they can't walk in on you too easily. But even once they're close enough and you're kinda in a clash situation, you're trading or engaging, even after that happens, you can still use shuffles to dodge. Now you typically can't ever dodge the opponent by just using walking. It can happen, but generally speaking, walking is a little bit too slow to evade attacks at close range where stuff is happening so quickly. But shuffles allow you to dodge quite fine. It would seem that from the animation, the left shuffle is a little bit less evasive than the right shuffle, I do think. Personally, I almost always dodge with the right shuffle, although sometimes I'd use the left for the sake of being unpredictable. You can also take advantage of the fact that you can cancel shuffles sideways, of course, in order to move to the side and quickly attack. You're gonna have to predict the timing of which the opponent is going to attack a little bit, but all in all, this is quite reliable for countering the opponent when they're attacking, so long as you have their timing down. There's a difference between dodging from far away and dodging up close. Up close, the timing is much more strict, and up close it's typically about getting a punch. You want to evade opponent's attack, but at the same time stay close so that you can hit them after it. But from far away, you're not necessarily restricted by timing or looking for a punish. You're just trying to make yourself hard to deal with. You're trying to make sure that the opponent can't just walk up to you like it's nothing. You want to make him work for it. Gotta get some of that preemptive defense in there. Just be a little bit more solid, refined, intimidating. If you find yourself getting rushed down way too easily, you should probably work on your movement on the defensive front. Try to stand at a safe range, back off, evade to the side, shake them off, back off some more, and stuff like that. A lot of the mind games in Blade Symphony doesn't really even happen at close range. You get more time to think and more options when you're spaced out because, well, you're not gonna die if you make a mistake. Which means, technically, you actually get more options when you're playing defense than when you're playing offense. Offense is a very restricted life or death type of game, where everything is super serious and you gotta make everything work super perfectly. Offense isn't really for creative people. You don't really get the space or the leeway to actually do anything creative. But once you're spaced out, now you can do all types of stuff. You can whiff safe attacks, can keep them out with heavies, block, wall run here, shuffle jump all over the map, do all kinds of crazy movements. It doesn't really matter what you do from far away. You can do anything from far away, even shurikens and stuff. So that's just one thing to keep in mind. Space allows you to do stuff you would never get away with when close. So make sure to stay spaced out when you don't know what else to do. And then we also have jumping over. So with a regular jump, as I showed earlier, you can jump over the opponent. But if you're not close enough to jump over the opponent, or maybe you don't dare to because you gotta be so close to do a regular jump, you can actually jump over the opponent while a little bit spaced out at the distance. So if you're standing at sort of a mid-range, like this, at shuffle distance I would say, so you can shuffle up and hit each other, at around this distance, if you perform a shuffle jump straight forwards, the jump is timed so it comes right when you collide with the opponent, which allows you to shuffle jump over them. Now the reason this is a good move is because partially you can't really react to it all that well. Since shuffle jump is a technique combining multiple steps, the opponent doesn't know what happens after the shuffle. What happened when I shuffle, it could be an empty shuffle, could be shuffle into block, could be shuffle into attack, or it could be that it ends in a shuffle jump and suddenly I'm moving way further than they thought. Shuffle jumping over the opponent is a good surprise move in many ways. Part of it is just that people can't punish it, because it's such an uncommon thing. People aren't really used to seeing people flying over them like that, and they don't really have this the muscle memory to turn around instantly and deal with you right away. It doesn't mean that you're hitting them, it just means that you're more likely to hit them because they mess up their spacing when they see that, oh, he's behind me, I gotta turn around, what do I do? Block, back off, whatever, and then they get hit because, well, they haven't practiced standing at the right place in that particular situation. But another part of it is, even if he knows what to do, a shuffle jump over the opponent is sort of like a counter technique against defensive players. So if someone likes blocking a lot, well, naturally you're gonna want to get around them and hitting them, but you're also gonna want to be charging to get to that tier 3 because it's unblockable. So this is a very good move to pull against people who use their defensive method a lot, because you can jump over them, and look, you're already charging pretty far into the charge animation. And so it's sort of like a trick. You jump over them, charge, and then they see that you go over them and they start blocking and defending. But then by the time they realize that the jump over was just a distraction, it's already too late for them to run away. Jump over, charge, and then boom. Now they can't defend anymore. It's a setup to ensure that you can charge very close to them and hit them with the tier 3, essentially. So it's a really good offensive move for that purpose, just to create a position where the opponent can't run away or block your attacks. So that's actually really good. And then we have Rhodes, final part. Rhodes section is pretty simple. Rhodes is just something that's really quick on startup, but gets slower towards the end of the animation. In other words, if you're in a situation where you know you're gonna get hit, you can't hit the opponent first, you just wanna escape. You don't really wanna block because it's gonna go around you or something. You just wanna get out of there really quick. Roll is what you gotta do. Now, there's probably nothing that's better in the game for immediately evading attack at close range than a roll. Even if you stand literally inside the opponent and they do a big swinging attack like this one, rolling at point blank is gonna work. Shuffling, you have to time it rather strictly, you gotta know the timing, but this you can just sort of dish out, and it's much safer. The start is explosive. But if it turns out the opponent was waiting and isn't attacking, then they can visually confirm that you're rolling and then try to chase you down and hit you after it. Which is why rolls are kind of risky. It's a long animation and it's got a lot of downtime. They can chase you down. But if they swing, when you do it, you will get out. It's sort of like a defensive mechanic which you see in other fighting games, like an invulnerable move, like a Shoryuken from Street Fighter, right? It works if the opponent attacks, it gets punished if they wait, essentially. So this is something you can pull every once now and then when you're really desperate to get out, lone help maybe, or if you just feel like the opponent is a little bit too predictable with attacking you. This is a good way to know about. And that's gonna be all for the movement guide. This isn't so much about how you do the things as much as what the options are. I'm not gonna go over what the shuffle jump is, I've already made a guide on that. But in case you don't know what the mechanics typically are used for and you want to get an idea of what to do once you're in the game, this is a pretty okay guide for that. So thanks for watching, I'll see you later, bye!